Double Four, you should have known this was going to happen. I dropped Fairy Tail after Tenro Island.
Double Four, what happened to the Fairy Tail review? Did you drop Fairy Tail? Does Double Four hate Fairy Tail? I see a lot of people online like, Double Four, you're not gonna like this chapter. Double Four, you're gonna like this chapter. And I just sort of wanted to read this alone without anybody's opinion and just take my time to think about it. Just to think about it, fuck everybody else, what does Double Four think about this chapter? And essentially, how I feel about this fight is that it felt rushed. It felt very rushed to me, like, since when is Natsu the One Punch Man? Since when is Natsu Saitama? Because that's sort of how they made this out to be. You have Natsu basically taking in the powers of all these other Dragon Slayers in the Ravens of Time, as Lucy and the rest of them are fighting the actual dragon on the outside. They put the dragon in the fairy sphere. Acnologia is basically just frozen. He can't do anything. And Natsu just clobbers this dude. Just completely wipes him out. To where Acnologia, by the end of the chapter, calls Natsu king. Like, yo, you punched me so good. It felt so good. You truly are worthy of the king title. And then Natsu's like, thanks, but no thanks. And a lot of people in the community try to tell me, like, Double Four, what did you expect? This is Fairy Tail we're talking about. Power of friendship. Every single enemy by the end of the arc gets one-shotted. Why? Really no explanation, right? You see, in shonen series, you oftentimes have a half-assed explanation, but usually you have a better explanation than the one Fairy Tail provides. I'll admit, take Hunter x Hunter for instance, in the Nen system. You can't tell me that these aren't more sophisticated explanations behind why characters grow and win fights than the explanations Hiro Mashima has given us throughout the series. True, but what really made me fall in love with Fairy Tail was the characters, was the artwork, was the adventure, all of these things put together that I never really had to dissect every single little thing I was reading because I just overall enjoyed it. To dissect every single little detail in Fairy Tail would actually belittle the Fairy Tail experience to me. But I have to be honest when I say the end of this arc didn't really give me those same feelings because so many things happened throughout the Alvarez arc that it was just too much to handle. So even though a lot of bullshit happened in the previous arcs, I always felt like, there's still Zeref, there's still Acnologia, and still a lot of powerful villains we have not encountered yet, and eventually sometime in the story, these characters are going to have to go through so much tragedy, and there's going to be a lot of losses, right? But we delve into this arc with all of these big giant threats, and by the end of all of these different fights, it feels like all of these characters are just immune to any bullshit. There are a lot of moments in the Alvarez Empire arc that I really enjoy. Gildart's going in against August, God Serena getting sliced in half, right? Acnologia being a complete savage, the Erza Irene situation, so much stuff that I could honestly take and, take it away from the rest of the stuff. This is good material. But then there was so much bad material that it just made me feel like, okay, Zeref goes down, we got the Acnologia, he's undefeatable, so I already felt as if Fairy Tail would have to explain an Acnologia defeat with some bullshit. And this is one of the reasons why Kishimoto ultimately had to get rid of Madara using Kaguya sort of, basically taking over because Madara was just too powerful. So let's introduce somebody new because if we take Madara out with one punch, the entire Naruto community is going to complain, oh, Naruto and Sasuke got some power-ups, Madara was defeated, this is some bull, I don't like it, right? I felt like with Fairy Tail, I already predicted how things were going to go, and that's bad. You don't want to predict how a series is going to end. Any series. And when they got rid of Zeref in his white god form, and we have Acnologia here, and we've got all the Dragon Slayers fighting against this dude, I already knew, I was already foreshadowing how Acnologia was going to go down, and it was exactly like this. They got rid of Zeref, they shifted him aside, and they acted as if this wasn't the character that they've been hyping up as the main villain this entire time. Like he was just a subplot, and then Acnologia just comes in and he's number one, right? Like we're just gonna deal with the Acnologia now after everything, and now he's here and fuck Zeref, right? Zeref is shifted off to the side, and that's the biggest problem. The Alvarez Empire arc should have been a Zeref arc, and it should have ended with Zeref. Acnologia could dabble around, but why are we putting Acnologia down in Zeref's arc? You cannot tell me that Acnologia's backstory is anywhere as good as Zeref's backstory. How Zeref was cursed, how he lived a life filled with depression, how he eventually just stopped giving a crap, everything that he touched died. What do we know about Acnologia? Dude lost everything, but then just for the rest of eternity, he's just killing people for no reason. Do you think that's as good of an explanation? No. The reason why it's not as good of an explanation is because they tried to fit Acnologia into Zeref's arc and tried to make him the center villain. And that's why when they gave us that little Igneel flashback where Acnologia just rips Igneel a new one, it didn't feel as impactful because, again, the entire arc we spent up, hyping up Zeref. He's the Dark Lord. He's got all these pawns at his disposal, all these strong-ass people that, they were hyping August up as if he could have been the one to bring down the Acnologia. They were hyping Irene up like she was the one who could bring down the Acnologia, right? So they use Igneel at the very end with that flashback, and I was like, it's really tragic what happened to Igneel. Natsu lost his father. He really needs to get revenge at some point in the series. But I wasn't really thinking about Acnologia like that at the time because we gotta deal with Zeref. He wants to end everything himself. You can't take two characters that want to end everything themselves, put it all into one arc, and try to make it like an equivalent thing, right? Even if there was both characters that wanted to end everything, one still gotta be the dominant force. We still gotta look at one character like, yo, that's the one we need to get rid of. That's just shonen template stuff. And Hiro, even though he might, do things that at the end of the day are very cliche, he's got to follow that kind of pattern, right? He can't just completely switch up because I don't think he's that skilled of a writer to switch up and make things so fucking good. It's not good that I predicted the end of this fight exactly the way it went down. Natsu getting all the power from everybody, punching Acnologia, ending this dude, and then by the end he drops out of the Ravens of Time and everybody's celebrating him. And let's talk a little bit about everybody from the entire continent basically giving their energy to put Acnologia in the Fairy Sphere. It's touching, it was nice to see them all work together, but how is that going to be the thing that really gets Acnologia completely frozen to where he can't do anything because he was surging with power? But now he's stopped because everybody on the outside is messing with the dragon. Like, if they wanted to take it that route, guys, fuck the Ravens of Time. Get rid of the Ravens of Time. Why bring in the Ravens of Time when they could have just done it all in the real world and everybody got to deal with the consequences in the real world? But Hiro was too scared to do that because he knew he rushed things. He put Acnologia in an arc that he wasn't supposed to be in, and now he does not know what to do with them. What about if Acnologia was only fighting in the real world? He was switching from dragon form to human form, putting Natsu and the others into the ground while spitting hot fire and just annihilating the landscape. What if it was that level of destruction and characters actually died? They died, they were no more. Makarov ain't coming back. Hiro wouldn't lose any Fairy Tail fans over that because the story is ending. He ain't gotta rely on the surge of popularity constantly being streamed upwards as he's writing the arcs. The series is about to end, so why not capitalize? But instead he was very irresponsible and it was rushed and it was disappointing. And it's sad because, this could have been a problem in the Tartarus arc. This could have been a problem in the Grand Magic Games. But when you have the finale, when you have everything built up towards the end, it is so underwhelming. I know there's going to also be people like, well, Double Four, you see, Hiromashi was really inspired off of Dragon Ball Z, and he tried to do something similar with what happened to Kid Buu and Goku and, everybody coming together, but it wasn't really executed well. And that's the thing, in the process of doing all that, in the process of taking inspiration from that series, he really just made Acnologia look weak. Like, why is Acnologia, the mother of all dragons, the god, the king of all dragons, here can't move? He can't move! You were the one who wanted to split them up. And they're connected in a way because, you put him on the ship and then he's in the Fairy Sphere, yeah, I get it. But during this moment, the moment that it all comes down to this one moment, that's when the Acnologia is frozen to get one shot. You try to draw a parallel between the Spirit Bomb and the Fairy Sphere. The fact that they were both somewhat relevant throughout each of these series, and they were, true. The problem is the shit was too rushed and it was 15 years too late. If it's already been done, you gotta do it correctly. But you didn't do it correctly. In fact, it felt like you just pulled it out of nowhere and now one of our favorite characters gotta go down because of that. So wow, it's really over. Zeref had an entire army by his side. All of these guys got bopped one by one by one. I don't even remember some of these guys that got taken out. He had the fairy heart, for fuck's sake. He got taken out in his white god mage form. Apologia, you saw what he did to those ships. Don't really need to touch up on that even more, alright? It's really over. I believe we have a double chapter coming up, last 2 chapters of Fairy Tail, and that's it. 11 years of this story. Now don't take this video as I hate Fairy Tail, because I don't. And we even get some good news that the Fairy Tail anime is going to make its return. And I've always said this, guys, but the Fairy Tail anime is better than the Fairy Tail manga. The only reason I stopped reviewing the Fairy Tail anime is because it was behind, and I really didn't want to do both. I just wanted to do one, and the manga was ahead, so I'm just going to cover that material and watch the anime to myself, not really talk about it. 2018 is the date of its return. We just got Fairy Tail Dragon Cry the movie. I've heard very mixed reviews about that. I have not checked it out myself yet. I need to watch that, but then we're going to have everything being wrapped up as it starts in 2018, as all of the final material gets adapted, and you already know it's going to be beautiful, and it might even change our perception on the final arc, because things might be put together a little bit differently. The anime has actually tweaked things up a little bit differently than the manga in the past, so you might expect the same for the final freaking arc. It's still going to have to be somewhat rushed, since they just dragged the Apologia into Zeref's arc, right? You know, unless they do some kind of alternative ending. And how would you guys feel about that? If the anime took its own direction at this point, you want to know? Honestly, I would prefer that. Will I review it? Probably review some of the episodes, you know, the ones where we're going to get some of those major moments. I mean, who doesn't want to see Gildarts go in against August in the anime? Guys, like, there's some stuff that the anime just can do better than the manga, like the fights. Like, you know, it's going to really be cool to see some of those fights in the anime.